on our webinar this morning of executing and motivating practical sales. Thank you for joining Joakim, who is co-founder of Radiant, Alex, who has the VP of Strategy and Growth with Contractbook, and Nicolai, who's the VP of Sales, and myself, Sharen, who is a channel sales manager from HubSpot. As Alex says, grab a coffee, sit on the edge of your seat, because this is all about practical sales. No sitting back and relaxing. This is sales. Now, as we know, in the world of sales, success is often determined by the ability to execute sales strategies effectively while keeping your sales team motivated. Now, due to the current market that we're in, the pressure is even higher than usual. Why motivation, leadership, and standards have become more important than ever. To succeed in sales, don't look at the sales as what it was, because that possibly doesn't work anymore. What we want to look at is what it will be. What do we already know about the exciting world of sales? And that's what we're going to dive into right now. So for the team here, Joakim, Alex, Nicolai, what do we already know about the evolving of practical sales in terms of motivations and standards? Who would like to chime in and help our audience here with that challenge?
I can give that a first go, and then the others can chime in on it. I think the first evolving, it's always been evolving, right? We've always been developing. Take the old geezer of outbound. Outbound was also difficult 10 years ago. It just changed a lot over the years. So it's still difficult. It's just you can't do the same that you did 10 years ago when that succeeded. I think the evolving in this is constant. And we need to look at right now what is actually working and what is not working. And what should you scrap? And when it comes to the motivation, the standards, and all these, I think there are a few key points for me, at least at the moment. And this is a very big topic. And today's theme is practical. So I'm going to try and keep it very practical in this and skip some of the theoretical equations of this. Motivation at the moment. The generations to come are motivated by different things than the motivations or the generations that were. That's very simple. That was also the case 50 years ago. So if you don't evolve with that practically, and I think right now we're seeing a big shift in how salespeople are generally motivated, like their persona themselves. And I hope we're going to get back to that, because that's that topic that has to cover compensation, of course, because they're motivated by a lot more. And you need to find those things. If you're not creating a cool culture, and culture is not created via salary or ping pong tables, it's how you execute. It's what you do. Do you follow up on the things you say? I think HubSpot was super famous in the beginning for having a mantra of giving everyone a chance. It was if you have the ambition, then you'll succeed over anyone that has the expertise. And today, I think that is still very important. And then when we take it into a context of what is happening in the market and how the buying process is, the buying process right now is that 90% of it happens before sales are even involved in that process.
Yeah, definitely true.
Meaning that you are sitting as a salesperson thinking that you need to win the deal, whereas what you actually need to do is that you need to make sure you don't fuck up the deal.
Say it as you see it, Alex.
So that's, to me, some crucial points at the moment. And when that comes to competencies for a salesperson, you need to understand what goes on in those 90%.
Yeah.
You need to understand what happened before they came to you. Because if you start asking stupid boilerplate discovery questions, to a customer or potential customers that's 90% down the line of making a decision, they will think you're stupid, and they will think you're annoying, and they will go back to the other one that actually asked the good questions.
And then you've burnt your lead and you've burnt your opportunity.
Exactly. And that's why I say you can almost only fuck it up. Like that, the odds are that that's the case at the moment. So focus on understanding a little bit of a bigger picture than yourself, and also what happens afterwards. Everyone knows in a SaaS business, like most of us are in, or just like even you, Joakim, you're not in a SaaS business, but you're deeply dependent on the partnerships that you are creating with your customers. So if the sales team are only focused on closing the deal, what happens afterwards? The lifetime value of the customer is the real value. So you also need to set the CS team up for success. That's an old story and an old geezer that comes back again and again, but we're not solving it. Let's be honest. It's not solved. It's still a problem. It's still a friction point. So I would focus on that at the moment.
Yeah. And Joakim, in Radiant, you know, I mean, I love what Alex said about being a bigger picture than yourself. As a co-founder of a very successful HubSpot partner, what are you seeing?
Yeah. Well, I think you're right, Alex. We see that the trend is a lot about cutting through the noise. It's really hard at the moment. Automation, AI has left a lot of touch points with clients. Everything has been. It is at a place right now where it's really hard to be real with the clients due to the overdue of information out there. So we need to create that trust. We need to hit it through omni-channels. We need to have legitimacy in order to succeed with our clients. And it's hard right now. So I completely agree. And another interesting fact is that, the new generation, and let's be honest, again, there's a lot of people working in sales in their 30s and in their 20s, right? Purpose drives them. It is evolving, work-life balance, flexibility. It is critical at the moment, also for their stakeholders and customers. But again, we also see that, at least here in Denmark, now the most important factor about your job is the salary for the first time in 25 years. So, it's just, it's a weird situation right now, how sales is evolving.
Definitely. I think you mentioned a word at the start, also, Joakim, frictionless, just to follow up on Alex's comments. With the buyer journey, that is one of the things that most companies, they tailor or create the sales process to fit their company. Okay, we want the client to go into this sales process for the sake of us. Whereas ideally, you want to actually turn this around. You want to create a frictionless buying experience. You want to help the client buy. And that is where I see a lot of companies go wrong, because there's so many steps that is not cool for the company. And I mean, the next one if you fuck it up. So I agree with Alex.
And that's a very nice segue into understanding the roles that everybody plays in sales and in organizations. So over to you, Alex. From a leadership perspective, have you noticed a change in the competencies a sales leader must have to be successful?
Definitely. So to put that in context, I would say we've heard a lot about the last couple of years. You have these concepts of product-led growth, sales-led growth, marketing-led growth. Some call it product-led growth, and then sales assist and fully sales driven. There are different concepts in this. And I think as a sales leader today, you again need to look at the bigger picture. Obviously, if you're in a leadership position, you need to understand the rest of the business. You need to be expert within your own domain, but you need to understand the rest. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So if you look at these concepts, you really need to look at what is the business you're going to join or you're in doing right now. Is it truly product-led? Is it a self-serve business, which is not really product-led? Is it sales assist? What is the expectation of you as a sales leader? I think we have been in a period of time where, like with the VC frenzy the last couple of years, where there's a ton of money in the market being pumped into companies. And what you're basically doing is that you're trying to hire salespeople. Like that's what we've been doing. And that is not setting ourselves up for success as a sales leader, because a lot of it suddenly comes on your shoulders. Even though you were in a product-led growth company, then there's just let us hire more salespeople and we'll probably be able to, with brute force some more sales. It actually doesn't work that way. Surprise. It works the other way. It starts demotivating your team. It starts demotivating other teams, because suddenly you have a lot of people in a sales team getting paid quite a lot of money, and they're putting pressure on the product organization, the marketing organization, and the others, saying, we want this, we need that, we can't sell the product without that. If I had a penny for every time a salesperson said to me, if I just had this one feature, I could sell the product like butter on bread.
That's opening a big Pandora's box, that one.
It is. And to keep it very practical, again, as a sales leader, go in, be very aligned with your CEO and the rest of the management team about what it is you're trying to achieve. Are you trying to do truly sales-led sales, like meaning that sales basically go out and create everything? Then the entire business has to be involved in that. And if you're not, then you adjust to that. You can't do both. You can't do the same. You can't have a sales leader trying to force a sales-led growth engine in while the product team and the marketing team is working on a product-led growth engine. Those things doesn't go hand in hand.
And I've got then that makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to just scoot back a little bit to something you said there about the motivation. And in the motivation of different people in different roles in the company. And again, then from a leadership perspective, Nicolai, do you find it harder to motivate practical sales today rather than in past times?
I would say yes. First of all, happy to be back. I think I fell out for a minute or two when I was speaking before, so I don't know if you heard anything or when I was cut off.
We did. It was all good.
Good. But yeah, I mean, as some of the other guys said, times are definitely changing. They always have been in sales, but I think over the last years, of course, they've changed even faster at a faster pace. So it's hard to keep up. And motivating reps now is, of course, very different. Joakim said that usually in sales, there's a lot of younger people there. And you know that the younger generations, they're motivated by different things than the older ones. So whereas maybe the older ones, they're more into like stability and all these kind of things. Loyalty is maybe a different thing than for younger generations. Just general job security. I mean, it's different things, just as purpose, like growth opportunities. Of course, salary is a difficult one to add into this mix. For some, it's a big factor. For some, it's not, and also depending on the times. I agree with Joakim that actually usually it hasn't been all too high on the list, but of course with all the things happening in the world, high inflation, insecurity and all of that, then it's right back up there right now. So really creating a motivating environment to, of course, do more now with less resources is absolutely key, because it is a tough environment to be in sales in right now. But also just because, I mean, young people, and with this red hot job market that we've had for a couple of years now, I mean, if they're not motivated, they can just like do this and then they can find another job. So, I mean, you see people staying in jobs way shorter than in the past. So definitely I would say that it has changed, and it possibly is slightly harder right now than what we've seen before.
Yeah, and the ability to do more with less and find the motivational triggers for that particular type of salesperson in your organization. And then, you know, from an execution perspective, as a sales leader, Joakim, what practical models and standards can you see being used for efficient sales in the current times?
It's a good question. It's a broad question. But yeah. So I think we should differentiate between standards, models, and actually being real and authentic, especially within this environment. So like if you see time is pretty much slipping for sales at the moment. According to the latest sales report from 2022 from Salesforce, actually, sorry, Sharen, we know that around it's only 28% of the time that sales rep actually use their time for client engagement and customer activities, right? So there's a lot of time being wasted, so to say, on it's admin and data management, etc., that is being wasted right now, and the same goes for the clients. So at the moment, to create a standard, well, the right information is key, to be honest. As Alex also said previously, maybe 90% of the sales process is actually being nurtured by themselves, research from a client perspective. So also according to Gartner, the right information is key to actually drive sales efficiency. And that can be pretty weird to hear, but it is, because at the moment with AI, with overload of information, there is no shortage of quality information when making a B2B decision. There isn't, and too much information has negative impacts. So at the moment, we see that information can move freely on more channels. It's more available, and information across these channels can do things that we as sales reps can't. Okay, that's just a reality. So how can we be relevant in such a market with these conditions, especially since the AI? One of the biggest drivers in sales we know is that the customer feel confident, right? So the customer needs to feel confident about making a decision, because they have actually made 90% of their decision by themselves internally. So when they engage with us sales rep, we need to instill that confidence, and we need to help them guide them through the right information, help them navigate through their own choice, and actually be sort of a travel agent, guiding our clients through the overload and sea of information, and of course pick and choose the right information that also suit us as a company with the value that we generate. So one thing is instilling this confidence in clients in this market, and the other thing is doing this by navigating and helping them guide through the overload of information. And I think that's actually a sales standard in this market, because sales reps must serve as guides to connect information to buyers, navigate through a difficult, complex journey, and simplify the process, and thus creating more value for the client. So adopting what I would call sense making, it's something that came through back in I think it's 2017, but it's gotten really hot again. It is very hot at the moment, sense making. Yeah,
I like that. Yeah, so what I'm hearing is like sense making, sales process as frictionless as possible. Let's remove the noise for our salespeople and get the right information to them, so that they can do what they do best, which is having conversations with prospects and customers.
Yeah, so you can look at it as a standard, because
indeed,
when looking back 2 years ago, I think Alex and Nicolai can also appreciate this. There's a lot of standards and operational procedures, models, stuff like that that we should follow. But it only made more noise, more automation, more outreach, everything like that, and it's not successful anymore. So you have to look at it as a process of, there's a lot of information out there. Let me help you guide through that information. Yeah. And that is a new role It's actually an old role, but it's now new again. It's very hot. Yeah.
And that's, I mean, from a leadership perspective, then, I think that brings it back into how do you organize internally? Alexander, in Contractbook, what do you see as the most effective way of organizing your sales teams internally so that you can remove the noise, have it as frictionless as possible, get the right information to the reps at the right time, so that it is as easy as possible for the prospect or customer to make the right buying decision?
It is. It's been one of my pet peeves for many years to try and sort of break up the traditional team structure. I haven't succeeded at all yet with doing it, but I think tying it actually to an important thing that Joakim said. Overload of information that happens through this. Everyone knows that, like, our brains doesn't work in a chronological way. So it's very important these days to have a customer journey. But we also know that the customer doesn't follow a strict line of information to get to you. Like, that will be all over the place in the top stages, and then they come to you. Now they're overloaded with information. They've looked at G2 reviews, Gartner reports. They have all this information. So your job becomes to take more the emotional part of the sales process. Actually, you need to create lovable moments for that customer. You need to make them like you.
Yeah, exactly.
Decisions are made emotionally and rational, not either or. It's a big combination of both. But the emotions often have a better effect, you could say, if you really create that lovable moment, because on the spec list, the rational decision, if they're booking a demo with you, they probably think you're a fit somehow. Otherwise, they wouldn't be contacting you. So in setting up the team, you also need to make sure that in that 10% space that you have physical customer contact, and of course also in the onboarding process afterwards, who solves that? Who is actually the right people to guide? Like, having a structure that says you have to talk to an SDR, then you talk to an AE, then perhaps there's also a sales engineer or tech sales or whatever you call it in your business. And then there's a CSM that also has to go into a scoping call and they're like, who wants to be the CSM that comes in, the deal is almost closed. Then there's a process in place that says a CSM has to come into the call and do the scoping. What often happens there is that the CSM and the AE is not 100% aligned on what the product can actually do. And that suddenly creates confusion for the customer. How great do you think the CSM feels coming into that call? They know that, I have to sort of walk this line. You need to set up the team structure so that those two are in sync in those processes. And honestly, I haven't seen it work when it's two separate teams. It's very, very difficult. So I'm a big, I would say, I wouldn't do what we're doing today or what we did 5 years ago. I would probably say death of the SDR in general. There's a book called that. That's why I'm saying that. It's not because I want over SDRs or anything. That friction in the sign-up process that the SDR, BDR inevitably generates is not great at the moment. So I would say more things go straight to the AE, but I actually think that because 90% happens, we should probably try and close the 100% before actually talking to them, and then have more focus on CSMs and expansion strategies and those things, making the barrier to sign up very, very little, and then structure it around CSMs and have more salespeople in CS, because the real sales will be going on there in the future.
But is the CS then sales, or is sales the CS? Is that the evolution? Yeah.
That will be a battle of words at some point.
Yeah.
I still think you should, if you are selling, I would say plus $25,000 annual contract, I would say that you have a sales team to cover everything above that. So you have sales still coming in, guiding like the classic consultative selling, coming in, making sure that the process and RFP, if that's the case, if they have that, is done. So you still have sales, but everything below a certain threshold goes straight to the CSM. And they just make sure that it's a great fit, or it's completely self-serve, that depending on your product. But it goes to the CSM, and the CSM knows exactly how to just close the contract and start onboarding immediately, because the customer's already made up their mind. They want to buy you.
I think it's some interesting thoughts, Alex. We actually joke around a little bit in our company in Plecto with this, and not to throw my inbound team under the bus here, but especially in inbound. I mean, we have these steps ourselves, definitely, and it does cause some friction. Of course, hopefully there's some benefit as well, but I do agree that there's some friction. But at the end of the day, like the AE, we tease them that they're not really sellers. They just send out a contract, because as Joakim also said, like, the buying process happens so much before they actually reach out to us in sales. Not that it's a done deal by any means, of course, and we still need good salespeople to make a difference. But at the end of the day, being in inbound is probably a little easier. And I mean, could it go directly to the CSM? I think that's a very interesting thought that in many cases could definitely work well. I also do think that there's a lot of variables in this, depending on what you sell, the complexity of your product, the sales length, and all of this, that will definitely make a difference. But I could see with a very standardized and easy to use product that you can definitely make a much smoother process that is a little different than what most of us do at the moment. So interesting thoughts.
And there's a big, let me say, like, this depends on a company and the deal, kind of deals you're making. Obviously it does. I was looking at the list of attendance here. I would say most participants today in this call, my guess, they would be selling below $25,000 deals a year for sure. And then you don't have sales engineers and a huge setups and 90 day plus sales cycles. You need to be way lower to have efficiency in that. So it depends a lot on your complexity, obviously.
But that also then leads into, I mean, you're right about having efficiencies, and, and it is important that there is the ability internally in organizations below 25K or above 25K, that everybody has access to the same information on the prospect and the customer, so that all the information that has been gathered, irrespective of whether they've been speaking with the CSM or a salesperson, but that all that information is gathered and held in one single source of truth, so that everybody has access to it. So, that means then that each individual, whether it's an AE, an SDR, a BDR, a salesperson, or a CSM, they're all involved in converting that prospect into a customer, or that customer into a retention long-term customer. So from a leadership perspective in Contractbook, again, what do you see as important to be aware of when your team works closely across different departments?
So a couple of things. First thing, we need to be looking at the same thing, as you say. Like, it doesn't make sense that marketing has a dashboard and sales has a dashboard in a completely different platform with different definitions and stuff like that. No. So to Nicolai's point earlier, you need to be very clear on your buyer journey. Very, very clear. Like, we have it as part of our the bigger customer journey. There's a clear buyer journey. Who buys? Who's the influencers? Who's the ambassadors? Who's the champions? Who's the users? And when do you involve them, and how do you talk to them? Because in our case, we have a product where we need to speak very differently to our different personas, making it very difficult for a salesperson, because depending on who you have in the call, it's a different perspective. So when you set this up, you need to make sure that, first of all, we're aligned. We have something as simple. The messaging framework needs to include definitions of what we're saying. We have different things in our product, for instance, that we're very proud of. We believe it's our secret sauce that makes it different, blah, 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 blah. We need to be saying the exact same thing when we talk about that particular. Like, we can leave freedom for a lot of other things, but that exact thing has to be the same concept introduced in marketing, pre-sales, sales engineers, CSMs. Has to be the same. So a lot about ensuring consistency for the customer. Like, we always have to look at this from the customer view and saying, like, will I be taken through this journey pretty easy, pretty frictionless, and feel that they are the experts on the other side. Then I also think there should be a huge trust between the customer-facing ones. So, and now we're excluding marketing from that equation. If you're sitting in front of someone who is obviously more knowledgeable than you, and you're a salesperson, do not bullshit them. Know your team well enough so that you know exactly who can match that person in a conversation. And then you say, you know what? You know so much about this topic. I'm going to bring in my colleague, Vivian, over here because she knows just as much about this as you do. And you would have a great conversation about this. Mm-hmm. So creating fluidity in the team is crucial in my opinion, but also very difficult.
I think what ties into that is trust amongst your teammates. And what ties into that then is the culture. We spoke about this earlier on, is the culture that is permeating throughout your organization. Because when your culture is built on trust, and then you have the information in your, whatever your central source of truth is, well, then that salesperson or that AE or that CSM knows with confidence who they can bring in from their internal team to solve for the customer as best as possible.
Yeah, and what I like, what I like to hear, Alex, is that you try to make a uniform messaging around value propositions, unique selling points based on the features, right? Those are uniform. You can use that from the CEO to the BDR, right? And that's great. That's delivering a standard that is a standard without being robotic in terms of communicating and engaging with the clients. And what I also really like is that you bring in humans, you adopt and you look at the client and say, okay, this is a client with that human, interface and interaction. So we need to match it with this human instead of matching it with a operating procedure, right? And that's what you need to bring in to cut through the noise, to bring in emotions, to being real, to being authentic. But still having a standard, still having a model, right? That's really good, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a difference between having a very good process and being prescriptive to an extent where people have no wiggle room.
Yeah.
And you should have a good process. You shouldn't have a rigid setup. Like there's a big difference, and I see the rigid process more often than the flexible one, and that's because people are I think people are afraid of just trusting, their team to do what they do best.
And again,
it kills the creativity and it kills the fun, and ultimately that's going to hurt your results. Definitely.
Yeah.
Exactly, and it's back to that trust, and it's back to that culture. In Plecto, Nicolai, talking about culture, how do you see the best way to create a positive and motivating team culture that drives results?
Yeah, so obviously that's some of what we do with our products. So so it's not only Plecto, but also what we help our clients do. So it's such a broad topic. But first of all, I think setting clear goals. I mean, for a sales rep to know what is expected and how do I reach it, when do I reach it, and be able to follow up on it constantly, definitely one. And of course, recognize and celebrate the goals when they're met. And I think a big no-no that is often done is that we focus on the end result, like the sales goal. Let's say you have a monthly goal or even a quarterly goal. Okay, that is the goal, and that's when we celebrate if you hit that one. But when you start a new quarter, it's such a long time until that end of the quarter. And being in sales is tough. You need that kick, that adrenaline kick, that recognition to keep motivation high. So this thing about should we focus on leading or lagging indicators, I would definitely say focus on the small victories, condense the goals down also to daily and weekly goals. So you get some small wins along the way, so you don't drown in the big picture. That can be very tough to be in sales, especially at the moment.
Yeah, so, celebrating the small wins. I love it.
Yeah, definitely.
In Plecto, do you do something in particular that celebrates small wins?
Oh yeah, I mean, this is not a promotion of a product, but it is like a very big part of how we do it. So it's tied automatically into our CRM and other systems. So whenever someone books a meeting, it pops up on all the screens. So it's there to see for everyone. Instant recognition. So definitely even down to that. We can make like custom metrics. Not only that, of course, whenever someone does a sale, that's obvious, and reach their goal, whatever that might be, depending on the role they have. So definitely do that. Then of course we spice it up also with some fun stuff, because working in sales now, I think we've spoken a little more about inbound mostly today so far, but of course that is tough on its own. But try being an outbound at the moment. That's a lot of no's, that's a lot of hustle, a lot of hard work to get the yeses, to get the successes. So at least try to make it fun. Do some internal competitions, stuff like that. Spice it up. So it's like individual, it's team-based, but especially also with the rewards. Something that I think works well is instead of course, we also like, okay, we do this, and you can win a bottle of wine, you can win cinema tickets, all of this. But maybe be a little more creative, and as a leader, even throw yourself in the mix. I mean, okay, if you do this, I'll do 100 push-ups, or I'll come pick you up and drive you back and forth from work, or I'll do your laundry for a week or something. Like, think of something crazy. I mean, what's more fun for young sales rep than to humiliate the CEO or the leader? I mean, I would take that any day over a bottle of wine, definitely. So yeah.
Or an Amazon gift card.
Oh yeah, screw that.
I hate this.
Yeah, we ran a competition in HubSpot a few years ago, and the prize was that we got to sit our MD in EMEA, Christian Kinnear, on a chair and pour orange paint on his head.
Wow, that's a good one.
It was seriously sought after, and the result was great fun.
Yeah.
So as you say, sometimes make it fun, make it quirky. There are other things that you can do, like, I think the way with salespeople is reward and recognition, but the recognition is a big one. When you do a small win, get a clap or put it up on a dashboard or say so-and-so did this. But little things, but other quirky things when leadership gets involved in being human, being that human to human. Particularly, I think nowadays, when so many more people work remotely, when you can see that interaction, it does drive that result. Joakim, what are you seeing in Radiant?
So we have had good success with gamification in terms of unifying both marketing, business development, and sales. So, for example, when a sales come through, there's have been a lot of touch points from different departments, and we can track, whether marketing has been with a few touch points, business development and sales, and also the partner itself, and thus the gamification shows this has been brought by performance marketing and by the sales department, and shows up as gamification to unify the business and helping driving some purpose. But it is an interesting discussion, because should one motivate those activities that drives a true value, or should one motivate true value, actually getting a win, getting a high net promoter score? But it is not the hard part of the job, because you are motivated when you're winning a deal, right? So where should one incentivize compensation and focus and motivation? Yeah, I think that's an interesting topic. Yeah.
And I think, from a leadership perspective, if you look at the results that you're looking to generate, and then put in place incentives or competitions or rewards that will produce that result and produce the behavior that will produce that result, because behavior will drive results. What are your thoughts there, Alex? Do you do anything like that in Contractbook?
Yeah, we've tried it a little bit. Then we actually went back to more of an old school model, and now we just hired a new VP of sales, and he definitely wants to look at sort of what is the right thing for us to do at the current state? Also growing, like, it's a different business now than it was 3 years ago, and like, so we have to evolve with that. But I think my personal and very honest opinion, also in companies that I'm advising or part of outside of Contractbook, is that the current model is pretty broken. Like, we have a setup where 90% happens before sales hit it, then sales go, but then like the real opportunities, or where it starts becoming really fun, is CS's ability to actually expand the customer. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have sales anymore. I also saw some of the comments in the chat. Like, definitely have sales, like that for sure. It just depends on which setup you have, and I think sales move more into CS. It's still important to be able to sell. I would say without being the ability to be able to sell your product, you don't have a company. So I'm a big fan of sales in general, but we need to connect the comp plans that we have, for instance, to this. So as your compensation is more important now than ever, but it's not the aggressive compensation that's more important now. People are looking for stability. They're not looking for 60% variable comp plans. So like, and that's where we went, right? We went to 50-50 comp plans and then say like, okay, sell and you're a rock star and you make a ton of money. The problem is the base salary moved up at a pace where we couldn't keep up. So suddenly the base salary became almost the same as the fixed salary of everyone else outside the sales team. So now you have 50% on top of a base salary that's already that's too high. And that's because no one really wants to have that insecurity about their salary. So I would, like, my mantra is that you can kill motivation by having a bad comp model, but you can't drive motivation through a comp model.
But I think what's key is to be agile enough to recognize when to make that change.
I think you should look at multiple teams at the same time and say there needs to be shared goal. I saw Kashan in the chat also seeing like competing against my colleagues is not a motivation. Like, it's motivation enough for itself to do the job well. I completely agree. Healthy competition is not that, you know, you're looking around the table and you're like, I need to beat that person and that person and that person. No, we all need to be really good in order for us to succeed. How do we create that alignment, not only within a sales team, but also in other teams, so we actually create the trust between the teams? My opinion, and I am not a majority here, I am often, I'm often arguing this against other people because they have different opinions. I would say that a team-based comp in smaller groups would be much more effective than individual bonuses that reward one small step of your customer journey that has no connection to anything else.
Is that then based on the true end value, Alex? So if you combine it, because we tried a lot of things, we drive a lot of sales from a lot of clients and internally at Radiant, and we've tried a lot of things. So it's true value, end value, combined in teams. Can you, just for the audience, what does that mean?
So if you have a clear customer journey, you also have clear metrics on each stage that are leading indicators to what needs to happen next. So you have leading and lagging indicators. Some will tell you how you're gonna perform, and then some will tell you how you did perform. Revenue is an ultimate lacking indicator. It's only there at the far end. So you need to take some of those indicators, and then you need to make KPIs out of them. And then you say, okay, X% of your salary is a variable comp plan. You are in marketing, so we're gonna weight the metrics or the KPIs from the marketing stages that you are affecting directly. We're gonna make that X amount of your bonus calculation. And then on the revenue amount, we're also gonna attribute something to that bonus, because at the end of the day, if the customer doesn't close and grow, we haven't succeeded as a company. And you do the same in sales. So you have a KPI on some of the sales metrics. Like, are you able to generate pipeline, for instance, outbound? That could be a metric that you can use directly in sales. But I would also have, is this customer with us for 12 months? And I know that's going to be a little bit far out in the future, but honestly, the short-term metrics and the short-term comp plans only drive short-term tendency in companies. Average tendency for a sales leader in a Series B company or a Series A and Series B company is like 7 or 8 months. Who can do anything as a sales leader in 7 or 8 months that truly has impact? That to me tells a lot more about the mindset of everyone in sort of the stratosphere companies than anything else.
Yeah.
One thing, Alex, I think we spoke briefly about it a while ago, actually, that we're both interested in. I don't think any of us have actually done it, but there's a lot of studies lately on compensation-less salary models that actually shows that they perform way better if there's no variable involved. I mean, because it can lead to a lot of things like sharp elbows, sub-optimization, and different other negative effects. But of course, it's very, very unusual in a sales environment not to have something like some money to strive for. I've been very fascinated. I haven't gotten the chance to try it out, but all the studies, all the facts are there that it actually works better than the common ones. I will say though that if you do have a sales compensation plan with a variable, which we almost all do, make sure that it's realistic. I mean, that is also what Alex says about how to keep your staff for just a little longer than half a year. I mean, yeah, it's nice to wave around a big paycheck, but at the end of the day, and you can check it on various websites like RepView and something like that, that it's like less than 50% of sales reps actually attaining quota, and lately it's been very, very far below that mark even. So tease around with this big money, but if it's out of reach for the majority, I mean, that's going to lead to people quitting and not being motivated and all of that.
Yeah.
And according to
HubSpot, Joakim, just before you jump, I was just going to say,
Really
folks
quick.
in the chat, can you just add in your comments there? And Joakim, now I'd love to hear what you're going to say there. Just want to get the folks in the chat to give their opinion too, because this is a hot topic, this one. How do you compensate your sales folks to drive the results that the business needs and solve for the customer at the same time? Come on, folks in the chat pane, drink that coffee, add your comments in. Joakim, let's hear from you.
Yeah, just for a note, according to HubSpot, Sharen, your business, right? It's only 24% of sales rep that exceeds their quota. Okay, that is also interesting when looking at compensation.
Okay, and what do you think about that? Do you think that's true? Do you think that's right? Do you think that's indicative of the EMEA marketplace? Do you think that's a global stat? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I can only see it at our own clients, our own teams, my previous jobs. I think it's beyond. It's above that percentage. But of course, I wouldn't, say otherwise. But yeah, I think it's above that.
And that also, again, it's a very fueled conversation. Is when you look at sales quotas, is your sales team's quota a roll up to what the actual quota for the business is, or do you set the business quota as something different to what your sales team roll up to?
And that's also interesting because what is the standard? What is the expectations, right? Is it from the high performer? Is it from low performer? Is it from what the CEO says? What is the standard? What is possible? I believe in communication, setting and reaching a goal and having some ambition, but what is the standard?
Nicolai, in Plecto, I mean, do you have an example of a successful incentive or reward program that you've implemented in relation to driving that motivation for the sales folks, solving for the customer, and also achieving the business goals?
Oh, that's a good question. I will say yes and no. I haven't cracked the code myself with the comp plans. That is a huge topic. So maybe let's not talk too much more about that. We just introduced a new one, so we'll see how that plays out. But I think something that has worked well for me in the past is definitely I like to work with team-oriented goals. I like to work with cross-functional teamwork. So we break up the silos. So if we somehow can cross-combine metrics or goals or efforts to reach a common goal instead of like personal wins, then I think it's better to work for the big picture in that way. That will ultimately be best for the company and also for the clients, because there can be like sub-optimization, especially if it's very money driven. Then you might not always do the best work, but you do it because of the bonus or whatever. So I try to do that. Then something I did that worked really well was also, instead of like incentivizing the reps themselves, was that, okay, so if you do this, if you reach these goals, then you get to pick and choose something that will benefit the whole company. So all of a sudden they didn't just get a personal benefit, but they were made the stars of the whole company. So it could be something like, if you do this, then on Friday we'll order burger and fries for the whole company. Imagine the recognition and the high fives you would get from everyone, not just in sales team around you, but also in development and in marketing and admin and all of that. That made a way bigger effect than incentivizing for a case of beer or a bottle of red wine or something like that. So again, circling back to what I said before, when doing competitions and other stuff, incentives in general, like be creative, think outside the box a little bit, and do try to inspire something that is more than just the individual. At least here in Europe, I think that works well. I've also worked with sales teams in the US. I would say money is maybe a little different of a motivation there than here. So it depends on a few things.
That's an important point. Like there is a difference. I do think, however, that the baseline of what like really motivates people. So you have, like in the US, you have more instability around salary in general, and you can fire and hire people at will. So obviously that creates a different mindset, but it doesn't make you a top performer to put the money forward. So the numbers that Joakim mentioned, that's also for the US, right? No one's hitting quota. And that's like, if they've put up their entire life around the OTE, that's a problem for them, and they get insecure and they move out, and tenure will be short and all those things. So I would much rather look at healthy competition and how to create stability for your employees than
good point.
Than pushing them even further now by raising. Like I've heard a ton of companies that just raise quota. I mean, yeah, you have the same salary. Maybe you can make a lot more money if you reach your quota now. Like, yeah, but how am I going to do that? Like, it's not like we did anything different in the top funnel. So like, there's not going to be anything more.
So look, thank you for sharing all those insights. We've got a good few questions coming in, not a good few questions, but I'm just conscious of time and I want to wrap up and give us back as much value to our participants here as possible. Our three main themes in relation to executing and motivating practical sales. We have three main themes I've heard coming through, and that's around leadership, execution, and motivation. Those are our three main themes that we've talked about here this morning to execute and motivate practical sales in 2023 and beyond, versus compared to what we had before. So just as we wrap up, the three of you here, Joakim, Alex, and Nicolai, I'd love to have just one final thought from each of you. Alexander from a leadership perspective, Joakim from an execution perspective, and Nicolai from a motivation perspective. What final thought can you give to our participants here this morning from one of those key themes? Alex, would you like to start with your final thought on leadership, and then we'll move to Joakim for a final thought on execution, and then Nicolai for a final thought on motivation?
I would say draw up, if you don't have a customer journey, draw it up immediately. If you have one, review it and go through it. The way you do it is just interviewing people, make sure what happens through the funnel, and then make sure you understand what happens on either side of your funnel, and whether your co-leadership team is actually following the same strategy than you are. It sounds really simple, but I would say 8, 9, 10 out of 10 companies probably don't follow the same strategy in each team.
Thank you, Alex.
That's a good point. In terms of execution, practical sales, adopt sense making, help clients navigate through overload of information. It is the new reality, especially due to AI. There's a lot of content out there, also quality content. Clients have been through a lot of the buying journey before they engage with the rep. So when you engage, help them guide through, navigate them through the overload of information. Adopt sense making. It creates real value. It creates real human interactions, authenticity, trust. and personality, and that's what we need to bring in when we engage with clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nicolai, over to you
Yeah.
for final thought on motivation today.
Yeah. So in short, be creative, make it fun. Try to steer away from focusing on the lagging indicator, the revenue goal at the end of the month, the quarter, the year. Focus on the leading indicators, and do try to make it a collaborative environment to focus on the big picture. I guess that was more than one thing, but yeah.
Excellent. Well, look, thank you everybody for joining us here this morning. As we started off, it's very early for some, not so early for others. I hope what all the content and the conversation that we have talked about this morning has added value to you, has lit a light bulb in your head going, that's very interesting. I must do that. This will be recorded. This is recorded. It probably will be sent out to you, but do have a listen back to the 3 takeaways and execute. Make it your mission today to execute on one of those, to drive your own sales if you're an individual contributor, or to drive your team if you're in leadership. But above all, let's drive value for our prospects and our customers so that everybody has a good experience of dealing with you, your team, your customers, and whichever platform, partner, engagement that you're using. So thanks, folks. Enjoy today. Take a takeaway and execute on it today.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, everybody.
Thank
Have
you,
a
guys.
wonderful day.
Great day.
Hey.
Bye.